Most of us adopted AI hoping that we could get our time back and then somehow ended up busier. But what if technology could actually slow us down? In this episode, I'm joined by Dan Cumberland. He is the founder of the Meaning Movement and Dan Cumberland Labs, which is super exciting. And we're going to explore how AI can be a tool for awareness, not just acceleration. And we're going to talk about how AI can actually help us think deeper, journal better, and realign our daily actions with what matters most. So if you've been curious about AI, but you've been a little bit weary about losing your humanity in the process, this conversation is going to help you find yourself again. Let's do this. Hey, Dan, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I've just so been looking forward to this. Just really excited and grateful for the chance to be here with you.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, because I know that you have a really interesting background and maybe not the background that you would expect
Yes.
for someone that
I
is
just
really
laugh at
interested in AI.
interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting is such a,
totally.
it's so, it is interesting. And like, the subtext is like, it's not a traditional, it's very much not a traditional path, very much a squiggly career path that I've had. I started my career in ministry, did a master's degree in psychology and theology around the question of formation and what does it mean to be human and how do people help people become the people that they want to be and make meaning in the world. Started the Meaning Movement, which I think is, where I was an embodiment of this passion that I had to like help people with these existential questions of why are we here. It's kind of my first foray into entrepreneurship. And just to fast forward, to try to make the long story short, was building that, a blog, a course, podcast. And along the way, I had the side quest that took me into software, joined a private equity team running a software company, did really well there, sold that company for them, and then started a venture studio building software, marketing technology software primarily, built 6 products and a wild and hard, challenging, that's a better framing. Challenging few years that eventually wrapped up when business partners and I were just going different directions. I was pretty burnt out, but really kind of found my next, I guess, my footing in running marketing for software companies right around 2022 as ChatGPT was coming on the scene as a consumer-facing product. We built some software using AI on the back end, but with ChatGPT, it's the chat interface was new and fresh, and I had been running this team of 12, 12 team members, and just felt like I just was spread too thin for too long. So wanted to see, like, as I'm building, this marketing practice, could I build differently, run a leaner team and lean heavy on this technology and see how far it could get me. And I found that it could get me pretty far. So, on the surface level, from the outside, I was a fractional CMO, but behind the scenes, I was basically running an agency on ChatGPT and other AI tools. So dug in deep and fast, but all with this lens of like, what does it mean to be human? The question that I have always carried with me into all of my work, which I found like has brought me to a kind of a unique position, a unique perspective in this realm. And so just to kind of complete the story, about a year and a half ago, as I was, doing this marketing, started talking to friends who are running businesses and talking to them about AI and what AI could do. And they had lots of questions and started to realize, okay, I'm doing something differently here than a lot of people. And I think this is something I can help people with. So then, took the pivot into really, how do I help founders and founder-led brands scale authentically with AI without losing their soul? And just launched Dan Cumberland Labs. DanCumberlandLabs.com just went live this week. It hasn't even been formally announced at the time of this recording as kind of the home base for AI consulting. So that's who I am and what's brought me here. And I think the passion and the perspective that drives all of this is that these tools are a mirror. They can definitely drive us, further away from what's meaningful, and we end up drowning in AI slop, but they can also do the opposite, which is help us and enable us to do the work that only we can do and move us closer to the fire, closer to our zones of genius, which is what gets me fired up.
So I love squiggly people. So one of the things that, really drew me to you is that there's a deep commitment to the soulful humanity connection
Yeah.
as you're exploring AI. So you appreciate productivity, right? You want
Yes.
people to generate and make. And
Yes.
so, how did you first realize that AI could even be a tool that could help you slow down or think deeper? Because I think, like you said, the AI slop. we think of it,
Yes.
maybe helping us not think.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
how
And
do
it
you,
does that too, right?
yes, it's both.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that there's two directions that we can use AI, and even like slowing down is so important and a big part of it. We can also use AI to speed up, and I think that that's where we often go. It's like, oh yeah, so much easier. This thing that I used to take this report used to take me an hour, and now I can just throw it in ChatGPT and it's done in 5 minutes, and then it's done. But then we don't actually like look at it and note that it like smells like AI and it isn't
Felt
actually
like
helpful and meaningful to a human. Like that, I think that's the core distinction is AI can go fast and it can do stuff and it can make things, but it can't make meaning. It can facsimilate. Is that the right word? Like act like it's making meaning in the same way that that an artist can rip off a really beautiful, meaningful piece of art and it's not as meaningful as the original. That's what AI is doing. AI is a predictive algorithm. It's a very fancy autocomplete. So when you're texting, texting your family or friends, and you're on your phone, it suggests the words to come next. That's what AI is doing, but in a much more complex way. So all that's to say, because it goes fast, and because we can use it to go fast, we can use it to go fast in the areas where it's helpful for us to go fast. And I think of this for folks, I think for folks like you and me, and I think for your listeners who are committed to doing something meaningful in the world and being and work that matters. There are parts of your work that you would like to go faster in, right? And so I think a lot about the friction in your work day or in your work task. Where do you feel the friction that prevents you from getting actually into the work, doing the deeper, more rich work? And how can we inject AI into those moments as maybe a shortcut into the places so we can go fast so that then we can go slow on the parts that matter because now we have more time. Now we're in it. And that's the hard part, is actually getting into it. So I think that's the first part, is thinking about like workflows, workflow design, and kind of the role of AI in in a process and in your workday. That AI isn't it's not a done button. It's more of a sous chef, right? You're the chef. You're the one who's designing the recipe, and you're giving the salad station instructions on how to make the salad while you go and you make the main course or whatever it might be. And I think that thinking about it in those terms as like a collaborative partner to make something that matters and inject it into the places where it's helpful to you is a great place to start.
I
So
love
that's one side of the equation. I'll take a breath there, but I do want to talk about the slowing down part and there as well. But I want to just take a breath before I jump into that. Does all that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think that, it's also having the ability to discern where are the
Yes.
spaces that I feel the friction? How do I even already have practices in place that let me know this is a place of friction? This is a place where I want to speed up. And
Yes.
how do I actually practice slowing down in the places that I want to slow down too? So I want to let
Yes.
you keep going. I want to hear.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And we can get into like specific examples because sometimes that's really, really helpful to talk about like what this could look like in, in a work process. But just to talk about the slowing down part, I think of AI as we can use it as a mirror, a place to feed back to us, to be a sounding board for ideas. And when I think of like the ways that I use AI to slow down is in practices, in looking at the things that I'm doing and what are like especially pulling out themes or looking for subtexts in meetings and interactions. Like what did I miss here? What wasn't said but was implied? And like those kinds of things that like, especially going through, I'm all about meeting transcripts. They are just gold and rich. And especially for people who are doing any kind of coaching, any kind of teaching, to be able to go back to that session and use AI as this collaborative coach, if you will, to help you slow down and dig into like, okay, how could I use this to improve? I was speaking with a friend, he'll remain unnamed here, but he's a very well-known coach and author, a very much a household name. And he was talking about this in his own workflow that he had just begun leaning into AI. And he was with a coaching client and they were working on setting goals and was just, he was just had his coach hat on, doing his thing. And as they were talking about something, client mentioned that something about her brother. She's like, I don't really want, if things are complicated, I don't really want to talk about it. He's like, okay, well, let's, then go what to do his goal setting process. And then with AI later, he was like running, pulling these transcripts in, just asking some questions about it, thinking about that client, thinking about what she needs and like where could he take her on the future sessions. And he asked the question to AI of what did I miss? What was said that I didn't pick up on? And it pulled out like this comment about her brother that he just it wasn't what he was focused on. He was focused on setting goals and helping her set goals. And so he started the next session with that insight of mind and was like, "Hey, I need to apologize and just let I was reviewing our transcript and I think I really missed something really important." And all of a sudden, like, she leans in. She's like, "Oh, like this is new and fresh and different." And then, he's like, mentioned, you said something about your brother and your relationship with your brother. And I wonder if there's something there that we need to unpack. And it just led to like a really robust and deep conversation that helped her get unlocked in new ways that she hadn't been because that was a place that she wasn't willing to go. And that insight, maybe if he had been in a different space, he would have seen it. But like we can't catch everything, right? So I give that as an example of like ways that we can use AI to slow down to help us be reflective and to notice things that otherwise might go unnoticed.
I love that. And I know that I've played around a little bit with, putting different transcripts in or even doing some journaling and then
Yeah.
ask guy, hey, push me here. Or
Yes.
can you ask me a few follow-up questions that I can go
Yes.
deeper here? And things that's been so intriguing for me because I use it as, part of my workflow, both in my job as a university professor, but also through my coaching practice. But then I also have to deal with AI in the classroom.
And
How do I, how
yes.
do I engage students? And one of the things that is intriguing, I guess, to me, a place of curiosity for me is that I feel like I'm someone that has always been fascinated by questions. The questions that I
Yes.
can ask myself, I'm incredibly curious.
Yes.
And I've been trying to figure out like how do I help others craft questions, get curious,
Mm-mm.
like keep going deeper. Like how
Yes.
there's these ways that I'm guessing too that you've worked, you've taught yourself a lot. But
Yeah.
also now there's probably some ways that intuitively you go, ooh, let's use AI. Let's ask this question. And you've got like
Yes.
really snazzy questions that you asked it. How do you help other people like
Oh, it's
find
so
those
good.
snazzy questions? Do you like
Okay.
tell me about that a
Yes.
little bit?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, so there's this concept that I call meta prompting. So we all know the concept of prompting, which is how you especially start the conversation with an AI. And but what meta prompting is before you start the conversation, you have a conversation about the conversation. And so one thing that you could do, right in line with what you're talking about, like how do you find better questions? Is before you start, like, let's say you have a task in mind or a question that you want to ask or something that you want to format in a particular way or some insights that you want to capture, start with another chat, use a thinking model. So if you're on ChatGPT, turn thinking on, or if you're on Claude, maybe consider using Opus or 4.5 with thinking turned on and explain what you're trying to do. And then ask it to first ask you questions, clarifying questions to make your prompt more effective and also to actually write the prompt for you. And what you'll find is that it's going to be way more detailed than you initially, especially if you go back and forth with it to fill in the gaps. Because if anything that you don't tell AI, it's just going to make guesses based on its training, and that's why we see AI slop again, or like AI content that just kind of smells and feels like AI content. It's because we've seen this combination of words. We've seen those, the M dash too many times to know like where that came from. But the more information you give it about who you are, and I have a framework I can get into in a moment about this, but who you are, who the others are, what the work is, and what the expression, the style looks like, and then references of what you're trying to create. The more you give it around all of that, the more effective the prompt will be. And so in order to ask those better questions, especially when it comes to AI, is use AI to help you ask those better questions.
I love that. I want to go back to the workflows because I
Yes,
know that how could you start doing that process and then it creates a workflow? And could you give me an example?
absolutely. Yes, yes. Great question. So when we talk about workflows, I usually start with marketing workflows, usually content. And the reason for that is it's the same for everybody. Like a LinkedIn post is a LinkedIn post, right? It has a certain number of characters. That's the max number of characters. But this same process that I'm about to describe could be used for any type of output, whether those are show notes for your podcast, newsletter, like still these are marketing related, or if they're things, things internally. I've used these same processes for I have a company that's a team of consultants. They're rebuilding businesses and have a handful of deliverables, all of like basically laying the foundation of these businesses. And I've created processes for them to use as they're interviewing all their clients and collecting all their data to make these reports that used to take them hours, if not days, that can be done, in minutes using this same process. So all that to say, I'm going to talk about marketing, but this isn't only about marketing. It's just everybody's marketing is the same. So let's talk about a possible workflow for a LinkedIn post. First, we have our input of whatever that idea is, and so we'll talk about this in two ways. First, I'll talk about all the different places that AI can be injected into the workflow. Then, secondly, how to improve a workflow and make it better. And then we can also then talk about automation if that's interesting to people. But you have an input. The input could be a voice note. It could be a transcript. It could be an idea. And we want to think first about what is the workflow for you without AI to create a LinkedIn post. You have an idea, you maybe jot down some notes about it, you think about it, you rearrange some things like, oh, that part should go here, there, you edit it, you massage it, and then it starts to come together. You do some more editing, then you start formatting it, then you post it. And we could think in terms of the role of an editor in publication. There's a developmental editor that starts with what is the structure of this thing? There's a content editor. There's copy editors that are looking more at the details and the making sure all the I's have dots and the T's are crossed, etc. So there's this spectrum from like fuzzy concept to like final written post that at any point in that process, we can inject AI with a specific role in the process. And I think one of the things that people do or don't do well is they just expect AI to be able to do all of those things in one pass really well. And the invitation here is to start thinking intentionally about your workflow. What is the start, the middle, and the end? And which parts do you love the most? Which parts do you get stuck on that you could use AI to speed up? And then how do you prompt AI to do those pieces most effectively? So to move into that second piece of like prompting and structuring a workflow for a better product, your AI has to know 5 things in order for a workflow, any workflow. And again, this is marketing, this is everything to produce what you expect consistently and dependably, and to be on brand for you and for whoever you're creating for. And I arranged this in a acronym called POWER. It's the POWER framework, POWER, to help me remember it. The P is the persona. So it needs to know who you are or who you're writing for. If you're writing something for someone else or on behalf of someone else or an organization, who is that organization? What are their values? What's their mission? What's their 5-year plan? Like, where are they going? What do they do? All of those things. The O is the others. So who is this for on the other end? Who's going to be reading it? What grade level do they read at? What do they want? We could think of this in marketing from the terms of a buyer's brief. What are their psychographics? What are their demographics? The W is the work. Like, what is the actual work product that we're creating? Is it a report? Is it a post? Is it a conversation? Is it an insight? What is that? And what constitutes like success and what constitutes as failure and for that end product? The E is expression, and this is like style. These are the language, how we turn a phrase, how someone communicates, how we communicate on a specific platform. We talk differently on a podcast than we write on LinkedIn, for example. So we'd want to like think specifically about the end product that we're going to be creating for. And then the R is references, to give examples of this is what good looks like, and also this is what not good looks like, to kind of add more meat to the bones, the skeleton of the rest of that framework. So to go back to a workflow, you have an input. You maybe it's, again, for marketing, let's say that we have some ideas that we want to take to AI, and then we want to create, a LinkedIn post. Those ideas might come from a transcript. Maybe it comes from a podcast interview like this. I could take this transcript, drop it into AI. If that AI knows all those things about who I am, who I'm trying to reach, what I'm trying to do, and where I'm trying to publish, then it can take that and I could say, I want to write some LinkedIn content based on my conversation with Danielle. Can you pull out 5 different concepts for me? So I'm using it to ideate again at the kind of the beginning stages of that developmental with a developmental editor, right? And so then it feeds back to me like some different ideas. And then I say, oh, these are great. And then I could either say, because it already knows a bunch about me because I've given it all this rich context. And I have a training guide, aitrainingguide.com, where people can learn how to build this context into a kind of a portable document that you can put into any AI system. Since it already knows all this stuff about me, it knows what success looks like, and it already knows what my perspective is. So then it can take the transcript that has already a bunch of ideas, how I then layer on top of that how I communicate and all the things that I'm trying to do, and then it could draft that for me, or I could take that idea and I could record a voice note saying, "Oh yeah, that was a great conversation. I remember what I talked about, Danielle, and we didn't talk about these other things, and those are related. Let's make a post about that." So then you're using it to kind of as a feedback loop to give you inspiration to write more content, but then giving that back to AI again to help you structure it. And that's my biggest struggle. I'm not a very linear thinker. I'm very much I don't know what you'd call it, a circular thinker, network thinker, where everything is related to everything else. So where do I stop and where do I finish? And so using it to help structure it, then it gives me a draft and like maybe I go through, edit those. Maybe then I take that back to AI and say, okay, I have another training document, or you call it like an AI agent or custom GPT that's specifically about hooks. Like what's the very first 2 lines that gets people super engaged? So I take this post that I've already brainstormed, drafted, edited, then we take it to another agent and we start thinking about what's the most engaging like way to get people to click on this and engage with it. And then, work on that, have it give you 10, find one that works, start, editing it in that way. You could do the same thing with like, what's your call to action? Is there a something that a question that you're asking for engagement, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all these different places along the way where it's like, we often just be like, throw a bunch of stuff at ChatGPT and then it knows me so well, and then expect it to give us a good output. But the better thing to do is to design a workflow. Think about these points where you want AI to be inserted into the workflow so that you do the work that only you could do and bring the ideas that only you could have, but use AI to speed up those hard parts so that you can go slow on the parts that really, really matter to you. And then if you get that all working, then you can talk about like it's all the same thing with automation. We talk a lot about agents right now. They're really doing the same kind of thing behind the scenes. It's just it all starts with having great context and solid prompts that work on repeat, so that then you can turn up the speed with automation behind the scenes. That was a lot. I know.
It's so juicy. So juicy. I can't wait to listen to this again with one of my spectacular pens and take really good notes.
Yes. Yes.
One of the things that I'm so struck by is how flippin' intentional this is. And that in doing this, you actually do need to slow down and pay attention to what
Yes.
are my processes? What are the
Yes.
frameworks
Yes.
that I already have in place? And how do
100%.
in some ways, I think that it brings to the surface, it makes visible our processes more than it makes them invisible, right? Like
Yes.
that's, hey, I write a post. How do I write a post? What does
Ugh.
me? What are the parts that make it a good post? And
Yes.
I think that I really appreciate the intentionality, the deep thinking, and then the way that it actually makes visible our processes
Yes.
before we could ever let them become invisible.
100%. I think that was maybe a surprise for me in this work, because I think of myself as like when I started really leaning into to teaching. I've done a lot of teaching in my life, not as much as you. So you could probably have told me like, of course, Dan, of course it's going to be this, but I thought, I'd be, getting into prompts and like building these work, all these things, but like a lot of it and where the big unlocks happen for people is it's in the thinking and it's in the strategy. It's exactly what you're saying, that like AI, it does amazing things, but it only does them reliably when we bring intention into what we're doing. And like when we really structure our question and our task and our workflow in a very intentional way.
Well, I think about this on like a family level too, what it would be to as a family go, okay, well, what are our values? What matters to us most? Okay, here's
Yeah.
all of the things that we want to do this next year. How can you help us make sure that we have
I
space
love
for
that.
this? It was so interesting. We were hanging out at the park after school, a bunch of the parents. I was a parent that was trying to figure out how to navigate all the drop offs and pickups between our kids. And I was like, have you just put it in AI?
Yes.
And it's just
Yes.
like it never occurred to me. But one of the and I've used AI for, meal planning. I've even used it to help me with some of my own, okay, I want a meal plan for my family. My daughter's gluten free. She's also dairy free. Also, I'd really like my macros and protein to be about right.
Yes.
Can you help me with all these things? But like, I love the idea as you were talking through. I was like, ooh, I haven't done the work of this is really who we are as a family.
Mm. Yeah.
I think you need to know about, even as we're
Yes.
doing something like meal plans, like what is important to us as a family.
Yeah.
Loves the way that as you were talking through that, I was like, ooh, I need to be more intentional. There's some places that I think I do a good job with it. There are a lot of places where I'm like, ooh, I need to go back and be a lot more thoughtful in what I'm
Yeah.
teaching it about what matters to us.
Yes, totally. And I'm a huge advocate for that because the more we can surface what we are telling it about us, and this is why, with the AI training guide, what I'm so passionate about is because otherwise we just depend on ChatGPT or whatever system and their memory function. The memory function is just like taking guesses at, oh, you talked about like that you like, a lavender scone. So now every time you meal plan, it's putting lavender scones in your meal plan or like whatever. It's like, does that matter to you? Is that really what you want it to index off of,
Right.
So instead, let's be intentional with what we give it and what we tell it matters to us and surface it in a way that we can go through and be like, yeah, this matters more than that, or I don't really want to, that's irrelevant, or maybe I don't feel that way anymore. So you can really take back those controls. And then also, then you're not locked in to any one system where it's like, well, I would really love to try Claude. Claude is great at writing. For anyone who is listening who is a writer, you should try Claude. It does a better job, in my opinion. This is a taste thing than ChatGPT. But someone might be like, well, I would try Claude, except my ChatGPT just knows me so well, so I'm stuck there. So by instead of just relying on these systems to manage that context for us, take back that control. You own your context, and then you can put it into any system that you want it to be, whether it's Claude, whether it's Gemini, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's some other thing that doesn't even exist yet, because every day there's new tools that are coming on the scenes. So I get all fired up, about it exactly for the point, for the reasons that you're naming.
It's so interesting. I, have seen some of those studies that talk about how people using AI more frequently, like, I don't know, their brains just aren't firing up as much,
Yes, yes,
they're all over the internet.
yes,
Of course, like
totally.
higher ed professors, we like love talking smack about this sort of stuff. But, my initial reaction to that because of my own use with AI, both in my job as a professor, but also in running my business and this podcast and all this. And I'm like, I found it to be incredibly generative and stimulating. And
Yeah.
I kind of have this theory that it's going to make dumb people dumber and smart people smarter.
Oh,
I'm
I think that's totally
wondering,
right.
like,
Yes,
because there are ways that you can use it to learn about yourself and then what you
yes.
know about yourself. If you know what matters, you know what your values are, then you
Mhm.
can even use that to create even better prompts.
Yes.
Like, I don't, one, I just, because I have you here, want to just pick your brain.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about some of those studies? Do you,
Yes. Oh,
do
I love this.
like, I don't know. I want to hear your
Yes.
thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like, well, I am obviously like very positive about AI for knowledge workers, like that it is an unlock, can be an unlock for us to do more of what matters to us. And I know I have friends who are much more more skeptics, and they're always like, "Oh, did you see this new one?" Whether it's the energy use or whether it's this, and like all of those things are real, right? But I think especially around like the thinking part, one is that like those same studies show that people who first before going to AI actually had more engagement with the output than the groups that were like not using AI, which is I think really interesting. But then secondly, kind of not thinking for me, not thinking is such a gift.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've got so much to think about. Can I please have one thing that like I don't have to think about right now? And so I don't know, but I'm not a brain scientist, but I know that their like decision fatigue is real, right? And so like do we really want to think deeply about every little thing we do all day? And my answer personally is no. I do want to think very deeply about a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that I really don't. And so like it and honestly, I think that that's a feature. But to your point, like because of that, I think it'll, like you said, help the smart people get smarter, and maybe the less smart people who stay less
So
smart.
nice. You're like, I'm not gonna say dumb.
I know,
And like you're like so thoughtful. Just like going there.
but I don't know. What's your take on that? I'm curious. As a professor, like, should we be thinking deeply all the time? Is that is that the
No.
desired state, or is that even possible?
You know, I think, oh, no, I don't think that we should be thinking deeply all the, I mean, I think the studies around meditation that show these things that actually slow our minds and
Yeah.
how good that is for our brain. I
Yes.
would think about it. I'm a real nerd around the distinction between habits and rituals. And for
Yes.
me,
Look, we could
habits
talk about this.
automate,
I love it.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
like habits automate. And like that's also
Yeah.
one of the things that AI can do for us. And
Mhm.
there is such relief in going, I'm just gonna do this and I'm turning it off while I do it. It's not all that intentional. I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
There are certain things in my life, though, that I want infused with meaning, that I don't want to just go on autopilot. And that's where I need rituals. So it's not that I'm like
Yes.
anti habit. It's that I think we need to be more discerning about where we have habits and where we have rituals. And I think the same,
Perfect.
like, I remember having a colleague of mine who was like, no, like, you should always be thinking critically. When you go to the movie, you should be thinking critically. And like, that's what critical thinking does for us, is that we can use it all the time. And I remember being so happy when I met like another really smart, nerdy human who was like, absolutely not. I want to just turn it off at the movies.
Yes.
I just want to enjoy it. Like, I don't want to do critical thinking around it. And,
Yes.
I've always been a pretty big fan of when do I want to be smarty pants McGee and when like just not.
I love it. It's so right on. That's exactly when I read those studies, that's where my mind goes. It's like, great, let's think less for a little bit.
Yes. And when I think about my students and using it, I go, okay, I want to make sure that you still have the foundations so that you can bring the foundational knowledge. Like
Yeah.
I have, 20 some years of nerding out with academic journal articles, popular press books, like all of this stuff that can inform what I'm now doing with AI.
Yeah.
I want them
Yes.
to at least have some of that foundation. And then,
Yeah.
but then when I think about a lot of my coaching clients who are brilliant, mostly women, right? But brilliant women who are navigating the mental load of full time work and full time parenting
Yes.
and
Yes.
value of AI and like taking on some of the mental load so that they don't have to.
Yeah. Yes. What a gift.
Absolutely.
Yes. Totally. I'm totally with you.
So
Yeah.
before we wrap up, I have one more just like sneaky question.
Okay.
But
The sneaky one.
a sneaky one that, well, it's one that really kind of stood out to me is this idea of, can you use AI to be more intuitive? Because I'm a planner. I love planning, but I also like space for what I would call like inspired action or
Mhm.
having through planning. I believe that you learn about yourself
Yeah.
and you have the ability because you know about yourself to
Yeah.
be intuitive.
Yes.
And like, what is the relationship between something like AI that, maybe is doing that thinking for you and like
Yeah.
also though being connected to yourself and your intuition?
Yes. Such a good question that like I probably can't answer it, but I'll begin to answer it. I'll do my best. And I'll tell you something I've been doing recently. I have been using an AI tool. I won't get into the details of it because it's pretty technical, but to like basically brain dump all the things that I have going on and then help me stay on task and like organize my priorities and like track my deadlines. And like I just often end up having too much going on. I'm very much a time optimist. I think I could do everything in a day when like
And
well, that's not how
you describe that as a time optimist. I like that's such a beautiful reframe of it. I'm always like,
Thank you.
oh, I'm in a cycle of overcommitment. And you're like, I'm a time optimist.
I've worked hard reframing these narratives. It's all code for like it's a dumpster fire, but we're putting some nice paint on it, you know?
I love it. I love it.
But so like giving it all this stuff, like all these projects I have going on, and then having it like help me prioritize these things. And often it'll be like, okay, your priority is this, and I'm like, no, it's not. Did I just say that? And like, yeah, I just said that, but to go back to your question, now I've like so far from the question that I don't even remember the nuances of it. What I think the really reflective piece comes in with what do we do when AI reflects something back to us, and what's like it's not just like okay AI did it for me. It's that AI did part of it, and now what's my response? And that's what I've been finding with as I've been using this AI project management thing that I'm designing for myself is that like yeah, it doesn't get it right. Or maybe it does, but like my role is to use it to reflect back to me what, some of my internal state and then help me organize in and set my priorities and know what I'm doing in what order. And it's just servicing that for me, giving me a context to like get it out on paper and be a mirror for me that like, journaling could do something similar. Like there's lots of different ways that you could do that kind of work. But I think it all comes back to like AI is not a done button. AI is a collaborator. And you should think of AI as a highly educated, straight A student that majored in all the majors from an Ivy League school and just started working for you and knows nothing about anything that you're doing. Like, yeah, it's brilliant. It can do so much stuff, but it doesn't really know. It doesn't really know anything that you haven't told it. And so like, could you if you had that person sitting next to you, could you like get value, from a conversation with them? Yes, of course. Would you let them decide like what your priorities are for like this quarter? No, of course not. And I think that's how I think about using AI reflectively. It all comes back to like it's not a done button. It's a collaborator in the process and a mirror that reflects back to us what we're saying and helps us, hopefully understand ourselves better.
I love that moment of dissonance, right? Like that moment of going, that's not my priority.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we're like, ooh, I don't really know what my priorities are. I actually have
That's how it feels internally.
yes,
Yes. Why
yes.
is that? Tell me.
Oh, I mean, I think that one, I really don't know that I think we've been taught to prioritize. Like that's not
Mm.
something in school. You just do kind of what you're told, or it's what's due, it's the deadline. We aren't, there's so much noise.
Yeah.
But I also think that sometimes there's so many ways that actually we are made aware through sort of the dissonance, through the negative experience, the resistance. So, I'll teach my students a lot that, if you're in another culture, for example, you know what a cultural rule is because you broke it.
Yes.
It's all
Yes.
of a sudden when you do something that is not okay, that like, and people give you a funny look where you're like, oh, there's a norm here, and I just
Uh-huh.
find it. And so I do think that sometimes we don't know what it is that we want or what we desire. And I think there's all sorts of noise that makes that hard for us. But then all of a sudden, AI will say, well, this is what your priorities are. And you're like, no,
Yep.
it's in that moment of going, that's not it, that actually you
Yes.
start to recognize
Oh,
what
it's
it
so
is.
good. Yes, that's right.
And I think it would be really easy with AI to go, oh, AI just got it wrong, rather than
Mhm.
going, ooh, this really interesting moment where it's rubbing me wrong. And there's
Yes.
something interesting going on there.
Yes, totally. And is it the AI or is it me? Which I think is a question we're going to ask more and more as these systems get better. But I so often our instinct is like point at the AI and like the AI is a problem. the internet's full of AI slop. AI is the problem. But like, no, the people posting that stuff on the internet are the problem. The user who's saying something to AI and then AI gives them a bad response, like it's just based on what we've given it. And so it's telling us something about ourselves. And I think it's a moment to lean in and listen and be curious.
Dan, this has been phenomenal. I have
So fun.
so much to think about.
Yes.
And like I said, I'll take some juicy notes later. Could you, let us know where can we find you if people wanted to,
Yep.
use like learn how to, I know that you're awesome on LinkedIn. Y'all, and he's
Yeah.
generous. He's so generous. Like the post he made today, he just gave
Oh
away
my gosh.
so much
It's
stuff.
been going viral.
Oh,
It's like
oh, it
my
should
day has
have
been my day has
because
been full of LinkedIn comments.
because there's so much, you're so generous. Like you
Thank
make
you. That's so
something
kind.
that is
Yeah.
it's useful for
Yeah.
people. And
So I try to do.
yes.
Yes. Yes.
And so how can they get all this useful stuff?
Yes, I love that. LinkedIn is great. Dan Cumberland is my name. You can find me there. Dan Cumberland Labs is my brand new fancy website that I'm very excited about. I talked about the AI training guide, which will walk you through how to build a, you can think of it like a custom GPT or a training document that you can put into any system, doesn't have to be chat GPT, that'll get AI to do the thing that you want it to do. So you can use this as a tool to develop that. Like it's basically, meta prompting. We talked about that already, like a very robust meta prompting process to create the context that you need to get AI to reliably do whatever you want it to do, to know who you are, to communicate on brand, to produce the kind of work that you want. So definitely, if you're interested in developing those kinds of workflows, jump on there. I do, for clients running teams, I build workflows and develop systems and automations for them. For folks who are, more solopreneurs and running small teams, I have a done with you cohort community where we're building these workflows together and learning together. So if those things are interesting, would love to explore those with anyone who's interested. If you could find me at all the places I just mentioned. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
My brain is buzzing. I'm so excited. I just want to sit down and think about all the stuff we've talked about and put
Yes.
put a few of these things into practice right away because they are things that you can just jump into. And so I so
Love
appreciate
it.
appreciate you, Dan. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this. This has been so fun.